It is the Heavenly Archangel type, debuting from Medachange 4, coming back to slay the Archdevil type. It is AAG00 Particle, coming to the game with a kit of Mirror Guard, Stat Cleanse, Rebirth, Biped Legs, and the leg ability of Auto Repair, which passively restores HP to all parts each turn as the battle progresses. Now, right from start, you may take a look at Particle's kit and think, oh, this honestly may not be too much to really boast on, because we've seen all of these skills in particular, especially given that all of her skills are also on heavy parts, with her legs supporting triple heavy. Now, naturally, these would be a lot of things that would deter a lot of things about Particle right from start, but they're only looking at her at a face value and not actually looking deeper as to what exactly she can bring to the table and just how good she is at it. Mirror Guard is a defense-based skill that basically will reflect any shooting-based attacks back to sender and intercept them in place of allies. Right arm of Stat Cleanse, enough really can't be said on it. It simply removes any negative ailments applied to self or allies and allows them complete and total negation from ailments for a certain number of hits, of course relative to the rank of the part. And then of course Rebirth is simply a skill that will revive a fallen ally back on the field at 10% HP per part. So naturally kind of goes into her ability as a holy archangel, essentially in this case, again tying into the motif as well of the AAG types, focusing solely on healing and back-end support in that sense, especially given the auto repair leg ability, which honestly does make this even better for Particle. But one other thing I do want to point out with this in particular Particle is take a look at the HP across the board. 4249 for the head, almost 3,800 per arm, and almost 5,100 HP for those legs. Massively tanky right across the board and right out of the box. And on top of that, let's also look at those leg stats for just a minute too. Look at those across the board. 797 mobility honestly puts her in that upper sweet spot that you want to be in for biped legs. So she's got very solid terrain pretty much across the board and pretty solid movement speed on top of that. But also looking at her skills, 1330 shoot resist and melee resist and 1278 shoot resist means she's, even though she fights like a biped, she has the resistance of a tank leg, honestly, in this case. So even with that high HP, she's got a massively high resist stat to boost, to reduce that damage even more so. And then on top of that, in addition, an evade stat of over 1100, which means whatever she's not tanking, she's very likely going to dodge or graze, which makes her even more of a pain on the field to take out if you aren't able to knock her down fast enough. And then, in addition to this, Particle is also capable of a Medachange form, where she changes her kit out entirely for Counter Guard, Super Repair, Time Attack, Tank Legs, and the leg ability of Holy Grace, which buffs all leg stats minus armor and HV limit for every positive effect applied to self. Now, Holy Grace may unfortunately be a little misplaced here with Particle's kit, unfortunately. Aesthetically, to her theme, it does fit very well, but given that the only buff that Particle can apply to herself is Stat Cleanse, you really aren't going to be able to capitalize on that too heavily, unfortunately. Counter Guard basically serves as the melee variant of Mirror Guard, so it'll return any incoming melee attacks back to sender and intercept them in place of an ally. Super Repair is basically a much stronger and more efficient version of basic repair, so more HP given back, of course relative to the level of the healing skill on the metal. And Time Attack, which serves as Grain's counterattack counterpart. Time Attack simply will raise in its power passively over time relative to the number of ticks on the Robattle clock. So pretty much right from start, given that Particle is already massively tanky right from start, and holds very true to that as well as she converts into a tank leg outright. But even with that, let's take a look at those stats too for just a moment. Almost 17,000 HP puts her in that really nice upper level for where you want a high HP tank like her to be at. Almost 2,000 resist for both her melee and her shoot resist makes her already high likelihood of reducing damage even higher. And let's also not touch on the fact that she also in tank form gets an additional 30% damage reduction that stacks on top of this. So if she wasn't already hard enough to kill in robot mode and cripple her from changing, once she does change, it's essentially game over, because even if you are able to crunch her down enough to where you probably could take her out, the super repair ability honestly does make it very easy for her to restore lost HP and essentially carry the fight out for as long as she needs when it comes to either healing herself or an ally across the field. For these reasons, I do have to rate Particle a very solid 9 out of 10 as a pure set score. I almost rated her a 10, honestly, and an absolute must-have, but the reasons I did not kind of tie into her particularly glaring weaknesses, despite how amazingly well-balanced she is for a dominant support and healing role. One of which is the fact that in robot mode, all three of her parts are heavy, which makes her very susceptible to the heavy punish of any press, break, or break hammer in this case, or even wide break, which could make crippling her a lot easier if she's not paying attention. In addition to that, her one actual mode of attack, which is time attack, does make using it kind of tricky, as even though it has a very solid base power right from start, time attack only gets stronger the longer the battle gets drawn out, and that's honestly the last thing you really want to happen in a lot of high-end or a lot of competitive matches. You really want to try to knock out the foe or cripple them as soon as possible with it taking its few turns to do so. But Particle tends to take this in stride, given the fact that she has a massively high HP pool and equally as massive stats to help reduce the damage and keep her going longer than most other tanks really have any business going. And then tie in the super repair on top of that to kind of compensate for any missing HP that she does lose. It's going to make her an absolute pain in the neck on the field to take out if she's not on your side of the field. As mixed parts, on the other hand, I do have to rate her just a little bit lower, actually, at a 7 out of 10. Because as mixed parts, even though her legs are truly fantastic, 3 heavy slots and massively high stats for a biped leg on mono female teams, they're amazing legs all around. That's unfortunately the only really good part on her, as even though Stat Cleanse is something you will never ever go wrong with using, and same with Rebirth, because they're heavy parts, that does make using them just a little tricky and gives you something extra that you have to consider when you're putting your team together across the board.